Well, I hope you haven't had a heart attack from chugging all that stimulant-laced coffee yet, because those zero viewers are waiting for your 24-hour Twitch livestream of you going from bronze to rookie in Apex Legends. And what better way to pretend you're good at games than blowing hundreds of dollars on super fast gaming equipment? That's right, today we're looking at a monitor for pro gamers, and spoiler alert, yes, it's the fastest monitor I've tested yet. Now, the monitor in question is the BenQ Zowie XL2566K, which was sent to me for this review, so thank you to BenQ. And besides the name actually being good for once on a monitor, well, the specs we're looking at here are it's a 1920 by 1080 360Hz 24.5 inch 16:9 TN panel with a contrast ratio of allegedly 1000 to 1. It is G-Sync and FreeSync compatible, and the big selling point, guys, is yes, it does have BFI or black frame insertion, which should help it in motion considerably, assuming that it's been tuned correctly. Now, it does also come with a stand that does everything you would expect except for move in one direction, kind of strange, but it also has some cool benefits like measurements on the stand, a headphone stand, and best of all, a handle, which, to be honest with you, I really wish every single monitor had a handle on the top like this. It's actually really cool. But let's not forget the blinders, because if that double max dose of generic Vyvanse isn't enough, surely this will tip the scales and you'll actually be able to pay attention. But in terms of the ports, they didn't list them out, so here they are. It's a USB to HDMI, DisplayPort, a 3.5mm jack, and yes, a regular power cord, thank God. And of course, it is also VESA mount compatible, and at a price of $599. My God, this better make me breakfast in the morning, because that is a lot to ask for a 1080p monitor in 2023. So this better blow away every other monitor on the market in terms of its motion performance. And does it? Well, we'll find out, but first we got to start off with the color, and this is a TN LCD. So my first impressions of the color are it's not great. It doesn't really pop off the screen, and the contrast doesn't look that great either. It's acceptable. You can make it work for professional use if need be, but it is also going to need calibration, as out of the box, it looks like they are tuning it for sRGB, which is totally fine, but the RGB balance was way off. Now, thankfully, I was able to tune it to sRGB with the correct color balance, so that was a massive improvement, and I will have that linked in the description below in my Patreon, along with every single other ICC profile and tuning that I've done on every display I've ever reviewed. Let's move on to the color volume anyway, and here, once again, not impressed. 71% DCI-P3. This is clearly supposed to be a Rec 709 only type of monitor. We are not moving into wider gamuts. But we got one more thing before we move on to the gaming information, and that's the brightness. Although this is still important for gaming, here 348 nits in a 100% window is totally reasonable and in the middle of the pack for other LCDs that I've tested thus far. But we're gonna skip the 10% window in gaming brightness because it's LCD, so it's going to be the same. And let's move on to the minimum brightness, where here, once again, not impressive at all. 0.2 nits of minimum brightness means that the contrast ratio I got out of this was just 1,650 to 1, which is fine, but certainly nothing special, and does lead to a little bit more of a washed out image when compared to other monitors that use even LCD VA, but certainly mini LED or OLED will blow this thing out of the water. But once again, not the focus of this monitor, so let's move on to what really matters here, and that's going to be starting off with the total system latency. And here, actually, this is the fastest display I have ever measured, and yes, it does feel faster than anything else I've tested before, but we're getting down to pretty diminishing returns here, guys, so this might not be the case for everybody, but I don't think I would actually play a lot better on this monitor than, say, a 240Hz one, just because of the latency. We're talking about 1 to 2 milliseconds here, noticeable, but not a huge deal. But regardless, very, very impressive result. But what about the motion performance? This is essentially the entire reason why you would buy this monitor. I mean, it's 360 frames per second, and it has black frame insertion. And as you can see on the left here, without black frame insertion, it's still very impressive. This is probably the best result I've ever seen out of an LCD. But when you compare it to the KTC G27P6 OLED on the right, which, by the way, is just $50 more currently, well, that one, when compared to the non-BFI version, I think actually looks better, because because there's no trailing behind the object, even though it's at a lower refresh rate. Now, when you look at the Diac High and Diac Max, which is their version of BFI, you certainly do get a more crisp image in motion. That is without a doubt true. I mean, look, it's not even close. It looks way, way clearer in motion. But there's a problem here, and the problem is there's crosstalk. Now, crosstalk happens when, unfortunately, it hasn't been tuned 100% to perfection when using BFI, and here that has been a problem. I tried messing around with a lot of stuff myself. I looked up guides, and unfortunately, I just couldn't get it to be much better than this. So you are going to have trailing behind the object, and it does start to raise the question, does it actually look better in motion? The OLED on the right, running at 240 Hz, has no visible trailing really behind it whatsoever, whereas this with black frame insertion and 360 Hz actually has a significant amount of trailing behind the object. And I think this is going to come down to personal preference. You could say that technically the 360 Hz is better, or you could say I prefer the 240 Hz on the right, and I'm going to be in the latter camp. I actually believe that in motion, the OLEDs look better despite the fact that they are less crisp. And in terms of the text clarity, well, this monitor, it's kind of a joke. Now, obviously, RGB regular subpixel layout does help, so there's not a lot of color fringing going on, but at 1080p, yeah, the text is not going to be that sharp. It's not going to be that clear. In fact, if you just get your eye close enough, you can even see, I can see with my eyes. I'm not joking. I can see with my eyes the RGB subpixels in the display. And the finish, it's using a matte finish. Between that and the 1080p resolution, yeah, the overall clarity is just, I'm gonna be honest, it's awful. Like, you get awful clarity out of this display in terms of static images. And to make matters worse, the viewing angles are also awful. When you go below the monitor, if you try and, tilt it up, you're gonna get a really high contrast image, and the opposite can be true for other angles. So viewing angles, not good either. And the uniformity also wasn't that great. I measured a difference of 80 nits from the brightest part of the screen to the darkest part of the screen in a full white window. So overall, guys, this is the fastest monitor I have ever measured. It is also potentially technically the most clear in motion I have ever seen. However, to be honest with you guys, I personally prefer the 240 Hz OLED. I think no trailing behind the object is less distracting. And to be honest with you, when you can get these 240 Hz OLEDs for just $50 to $100 more, and you're getting a monitor with infinite contrast, better motion performance, in my opinion, and about 78% higher resolution, it's really hard to recommend this monitor. I think at $600, it just genuinely does not have a place in the market, even for professional gamers, as I do believe that high resolution is useful even for professional play. So I really think that this monitor needs to drop significantly in terms of price, and we're talking realistically, it's got to be under $400. It needs to have a massive price drop before I can recommend this monitor, although I do like some of the stuff that they're doing in terms of the stand and usability for professional gamers. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, Rupro has you covered with their certified 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes of up to 50 feet and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K 60 FPS or 4K 144 FPS 10-bit HDR video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports ER. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out Rupro on Amazon today.